We continue with our Holy Bible reading to Request Divine Union, part 72. We continue with 2 Kingdoms, Old Testament, chapter 18. Absalom's demise. David considered the people with him and set captains of thousands and captains of hundreds over them. Then David sent out 1/3 of the people under the hand of Joab, 1/3 under the hand of Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, Joab's brother, and 1/3 under the hand of Ittai the Gathite. And David said to the people, I myself will surely go out with you as well. But they answered, You shall not go out, for if we flee away, they will not care about us, nor will they care about us if half of us die. You are worthy 10,000 of us. And now it is well with you. Now it is well that you will be more help to us in the city. Then the king said to them, I will do whatever seems best to you. So the king stood beside the gate, and all the people went out by hundreds and by thousands. The king commanded Joab, Abishai, and Ittai, saying, For my sake deal gently with the young man Absalom. And the people heard the king give orders to all the captains concerning Absalom. So the people went out into the thicket against Israel, and the battle was in the thicket of Ephraim. The people of Israel were overthrown there before the servants of David, and a great slaughter of 20,000 men took place there that day. And the battle itself was scattered over the face of all the countryside, and the thicket of woods devoured more of the people that day than did the sword. Then Absalom met the servants of David. Absalom rode on his mule. The mule went under the thick boughs of a great oak tree, and his head caught in the oak, so he was left hanging between heaven and earth. And the mule that was under him went on. Now a certain man saw it and told Joab, saying, I just saw Absalom hanging in an oak tree. So Joab sent to the man and told him, You just saw him and did not dislodge him so he could fall to the ground? Why, I would have given you 10 shekels of silver in a belt. But the man said to Joab, Though I were to receive 1,000 shekels of silver in my hand, I would not raise my hand against the king's son. For in our hearing the king commanded you and Abishai and Ittai, saying, Protect the young man Absalom for me. Do not deal with his life in a dishonorable way, for there is nothing hidden from the king, and you yourself would have set yourself against him. Then Joab said, I will make preparation for this, and thus I will not linger with you. Joab took 3 spears in his hand and thrust them through the heart of Absalom while he was yet alive in the grip of the oak tree. Then 10 young men who bore Joab's armor surrounded Absalom and struck and killed him. So Joab blew the trumpet, and the people returned from pursuing Israel, for Joab spared the people. And they took Absalom and cast him into a large chasm in the thicket, into a great pit, and laid a very large heap of stones over him. Then all of Israel fled, everyone to his tent. Now Absalom in his lifetime had taken and set up a pillar for himself in the king's valley, for he said, I have no son to keep my name in remembrance. He called the pillar Absalom's hand, and that is what it is called to this day. Absalom's death reported to David. Then Ahimaaz, son of Zadok, said, Let me run now and take the good news to the king, for the Lord avenged him from the hand of his enemies. And Joab said to him, You will be no messenger of good news today, for you shall take good news another day. But on this day you shall take no good news on account of the king's son who is dead. Then Joab said to Hushai, Go tell the king what you saw. So the Cushite bowed to Joab and left, and Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok, said again to Joab, But whatever happens, let me run after the Cushite. So Joab said, My son, why are you going to run? Come here, because you have no good news which is of use to the one going. And he said, What if I run? So Joab said to him, Run. Then Ahimaaz ran by way of Ketcher and outran Hushai. Now David was sitting between the 2 gates, and the watchman went up to the top of the gate of the wall and lifted his eyes and looked out. he saw a man running by himself. Then the watchman cried out and told the king. And the king said, If he is alone, there is good news in his mouth. And he came quickly and drew near. Then the watchman saw another man running, and the watchman called towards the gate and said, There's another man running alone. And the king said, He also brings good news. So the watchman said, I think the running of the first one resembles the running of Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok. And the king said, He is a good man and comes with good news. And Ahimaaz called out and said to the king, Peace. Then he bowed to the king with his face to the earth and said, Blessed is the Lord your God, who delivered up the men who raised their hand against my lord the king. The king said, Is the young man Absalom safe? Ahimaaz answered, I saw a great multitude at the time of Joab sending the king's servant and me, your servant. I saw a great tumult, but I did not know what was happening. And the king said, Turn aside and stand here. So he turned aside and stood still. Just then Hushai came, and he said to the king, There is good news, my lord the king, for the Lord avenged you today, and on all those who rose against you. And the king said to Hushai, Is the young man Absalom safe? So Hushai answered, May the enemies of my lord the king, and all who rise against you to do harm, be like that young man. David mourns for Absalom, chapter 19. The king was deeply troubled, and went up to the chamber over the gate and wept. And thus he said as he went, My son Absalom, my son Absalom, why your death instead of mine, I instead of you? Absalom, my son. Joab was told, Behold, the king is weeping and mourning for Absalom. So the deliverance of that day was turned into mourning for all the people. For that day the people heard it said, The king is grieving for his son. And the people crept back into the city that day, like people ashamed for being cowardly in the midst of battle. The king covered his face and cried out with a loud voice, My son Absalom, Absalom, my son. And Joab came into the house before the king and said, Today you have disgraced all your servants who delivered you today, the lives of your sons and daughters, the lives of your wives, and the lives of your concubines, because you love those who hate you and hate those who love you. For today you declared that you regard neither rulers nor servants. For I perceive that if Absalom lived and all of us had died today, then it would be well pleasing to you. Now therefore arise, go out and speak to the heart of your servants. For I swore by the Lord, if you do not go out today, not one will stay with you tonight. And that will be worse for you than all the evil that has befallen you from your youth until now. Then the king arose and sat at the gate, and they told all the people, saying, There is the king sitting at the gate. So all the people came before the king, for Israel fled every man to his tent. David's return to Jerusalem. Now all the people were in the dispute throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, The king saved us from all our enemies. He delivered us from the hand of the Philistines, and now he fled from the land and his kingdom because of Absalom. But Absalom, whom we anointed over us, died in battle. Now therefore, why do you say nothing about bringing back the king? So King David sent to Zadok and Abiathar the priest, saying, Speak to me, elders of Judah, saying, Why are you the last to bring the king back to his house, since the words of all Israel have come to the king? You are my brethren, you are my bone and my flesh. Why then are you the last to bring back the king into his house? And say to Amasa, Are you not my bone and my flesh? God, do so to me, and more also, if you are not permanent commander of the army instead of Joab. The king swayed the hearts of all the men of Judah, as that of one man, and word was sent to the king, saying, Return you and all your servants. Then the king returned and came as far as the river Jordan, and the men of Judah came to Gilgal on their way to meet the king, to escort him across the river Jordan. David shows mercy to Shimei. And Shimei, the son of Gera, a Benjaminite who was from Bahurim, hastened to come down with the men of Judah to meet King David. There were 1,000 men of Benjamin with him, and Ziba the servant of the house of Saul, and his 15 sons and 20 servants with him, and they went over the Jordan before the king. And they went through the ford, carrying the king's household, and the service of escorting the king was completed, and they did what he thought good. Now Shimei the son of Gera fell on his face before the king, as he was crossing the river Jordan. And he said to the king, "Do not let my lord impute iniquity to me, or remember the wrong your servant did on the day when my lord the king left Jerusalem, so that the king should take it to heart. For I, your servant, know that I sinned. Therefore here I am, the first to come today of all the house of Joseph to go down to meet my lord the king." But Abishai the son of Zeruiah spoke up and said, "Shall not Shimei be put to death for this, because he cursed the Lord's anointed?" And David said, "What have I to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah, that you should be adversaries to me today? Shall any man be put to death today in Israel? For I do not know today whether I am king over Israel." And the king said to Shimei, "You shall not die," for the king swore to him. David receives Mephibosheth. Now Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, came down to meet the king, and he had not cared for his feet, nor trimmed his nails or his mustache, or washed his clothes from the day the king departed until the day he returned in peace. So when he came to Jerusalem to meet the king said to him, "Why did you not go with me, Mephibosheth?" And he answered, "My lord the king, my servant deceived me. For your servant said to him, I will saddle a donkey for myself, so I may ride on it and go to the king, because your servant is lame. And he deceived your servant to my lord the king, but my lord the king is like an angel of God. Therefore do what is good in your eyes. For all my father's house were but dead men before my lord the king. Yet you set your servant among those who eat at your table, or your own table. Therefore what right do I still have to cry out any more to the king?" So the king said to him, "Why are you still speaking of your affairs? I said, you and Ziba divide the land." Then Mephibosheth said to the king, "No, let him take it all, since my lord the king has come back in peace to his house." David's mercy to Barzillai. And Barzillai the Gileadite came down from Rogelim and went across the river Jordan with the king to escort him across the Jordan. Now Barzillai was a very aged man, 80 years old, and had provided the king with supplies while he stayed at Mahanaim, for he was a very great man. And the king said to Barzillai, "Come across with me, and I will provide for your old age in Jerusalem." But Barzillai said to the king, "How long have I to live, that I should go up with the king to Jerusalem? I am 80 years old today. Can I discern between the good and the bad? Can your servant taste what I eat or what I drink? Can I hear any longer the voice of singing men and singing women? Why then should your servant be a further burden to my lord the king? Your servant will go a little way across the Jordan with the king. Why should the king repay me with such a reward? Let me, your servant, remain and die in my own city near the grave of my father and mother. But here is your servant Chimham. He will cross over with my lord the king, and do for him what seems good to you." And the king answered, "Chimham shall cross over with me, and I will do for him what seems good to you. Now I will do for you whatever you ask me." Then all the people went over the Jordan, and the king crossed, and the king kissed Barzillai and blessed him, and he returned to his place. The debate at Gilgal. Now the king went on to Gilgal, and Chimham went on with him, and all the people of Judah escorted the king, and half the people of Israel. And behold, all the men of Israel came to the king and said to him, "Why did our brethren, the men of Judah, steal you away and bring the king, his household, and all David's men with him across the Jordan?" So all the men of Judah answered men of Israel, "Because the king is a close relative of ours. Why then are you angry over this matter? Have we ever eaten at the king's expense, or has he given us any gift? And the men of Israel answered the men of Judah and said, We have 10 shares in the king, therefore we are first over you, and we also have a greater right to David than you. Why then do you despise us? Were we not the first to advise bringing back our king? The words of the men of Judah were sharper than the words of the men of Israel. Chapter 20. Rebellion of Sheba. There happened to be there a rebel whose name was Sheba, the son of Bechri the Benjaminite. And he blew a trumpet and said, We have no share in David, nor do we have inheritance in the son of Jesse. Every man to your tents, O Israel. So every man of Israel deserted David and followed Sheba the son of Bechri. But the men of Judah from the Jordan as far as Jerusalem clung to their king. Now David entered his house at Jerusalem, and the king took the 10 women, his concubines, whom he had left to keep the house, and put them under guard and supported them, but did not go into them. So they were shut up to the day of their death, living in widowhood. And the king said to Amasa, Within 3 days call the men of Judah for me, and be present here yourself. So Amasa went to call for the men of Judah, but he delayed longer than the time set by David, who appointed him. And David said to Abishai, Now Sheba the son of Bichri will do us more harm than Absalom. Take your Lord's servants with you and pursue him, so that he does not fortify cities for himself and escape from our sight. So Joab's men with the Cherethites, the Pelethites, and all the mighty men went out after him. They went out of Jerusalem and pursued Sheba the son of Bichri, and when they reached the large stone in Gibeon, Amasa came before them. Now Joab was dressed in battle armor, and on it was a belt with a sword fastened in its sheath at his hips. Then the sword came out and fell to the ground. When Joab said to Amasa, Are you healthy, brother? And Joab took Amasa by the beard with his right hand to kiss him, but Amasa did not notice the sword that was in Joab's hand, and he struck him with it in the stomach, and his entrails poured out to the ground. He did not strike him again, and he died. Then Joab and Abishai his brother pursued Sheba the son of Bichri. Meanwhile, one of Joab's servants stood near him and said, Whoever favors Joab and whoever is for David, follow Joab. But Amasa was soaked in his own blood in the middle of the road, and when the men saw that all the people stood still, he removed Amasa from the path onto the field. He threw a garment over him because he saw that everyone halted to come upon him. And when he was removed from the road, all the people followed after Joab to pursue Sheba the son of Bichri. And he went through all the tribes of Israel to Abel and Beth Mahan and all the Charites. So they joined together and went after Sheba. They then came and besieged Sheba in Abel and Beth Mahan, and they raised a siege mound against the city and stood by the rampart, and all the people with Joab considered pulling down the wall. Then a wise woman cried out from the wall, Listen, listen, tell Joab to come near, and I will speak with him. When he came near to her, the woman said, Are you Joab? He answered, Yes, I am. Then she said to him, Hear the words of your handmaid. And he replied, I am listening. So she spoke, saying, In former times they used to say, They asked at Abel and in Dan whether the things established by the faithful of Israel failed, and they will ask in Abel and whether they failed. I am among the peaceable and loyal in Israel. You seek to put a city and a capital in Israel to death. Why are you going to swallow up the inheritance of the Lord? And Joab answered and said, Far be it from me to swallow it up or destroy it. That is not so, but a man from the mountain of Ephraim, Sheba the son of Bichri by name, raised his hand against King David. Deliver him only to me, and I will depart from the city. So the woman said to Joab, Watch, his head will be thrown to you over the wall. Then the woman in her wisdom went to the people and spoke to all the city, and they cut off the head of Sheba the son of Bichri and threw it out to Joab. Then he blew a trumpet, and they scattered from the city, every man to his tent. So Joab returned to the king at Jerusalem. David's officers. And Joab was over all the army of Israel. Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada, was over the Cherethites and the Pelethites. Adoram was in charge of revenue. Jehoshaphat, the son of Ahilud was recorder. Shiva was scribe. Zadok and Abiathar were the priests, and Ira, the Jairite, was a priest of David. Chapter 21. The descendants of Saul are killed. Now there was a famine in all the days of David for 3 years, year after year. And David inquired before the Lord. And the Lord said, In Saul and his unrighteous house there is wrongdoing because of his bloodthirsty killings when he killed the Gibeonites. So King David called the Gibeonites and spoke to them. Now the Gibeonites were not sons of Israel, but belonged to the remnant of the Amorites. The sons of Israel had sworn protection to them, but Saul had sought to kill them in his zeal for the sons of Israel and Judah. And David said to the Gibeonites, What shall I do for you? And with what shall I make atonement so that you may bless the inheritance of the Lord? And the Gibeonites said to him, We will have no silver or gold from Saul or from his house, nor shall you kill any man in Israel for us. So he said, What do you want me to do for you? And they answered the king, As for the man who consumes us and pursued us, who deceived us to destroy us, let us blot him out from remaining in any of the territories of Israel. Let 7 sons of his descendants be delivered to us, and we will hang them in broad daylight before the Lord in Gibeon of Saul, whom the Lord chose. And the king said, I will give them. But the king spared Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, because of the Lord's oath between David and Jonathan, the son of Saul. So the king took Armoni and Mephibosheth, the 2 sons of Rizpah, the daughter of Aiah, whom she bore to Saul, and the 5 sons of Michal, the daughter of Saul, whom she bore for Adriel, the son of Barzillai and the Meholathite, and he delivered them into the hands of the Gibeonites. They hanged them on the hill before the Lord, so they fell all 7 together and were put to death on the days of harvest in the first days in the beginning of barley harvest. Now Rizpah, the daughter of Aiah, took sackcloth and spread it for herself on the rock from the beginning of barley harvest until the rains poured on them from heaven. And she did not allow the birds of the air to rest on them by day, nor by the beasts of the field by night. David was told that Rizpah, the daughter of Aiah, the concubine of Saul, had done, and they were faint. And Dan, son of Joab, from the offspring of the giants, overtook them. Then David went and took Saul's bones and the bones of Jonathan his son. He took them from the men of Jabesh Gilead, who stole them from the squares of Beth-shan, where the Philistines put them, on the day the Philistines struck down Saul in Gilboa. So he brought up the bones of Saul and the bones of Jonathan his son from there, and they gathered the bones of those who were hanged, and they buried Saul's bones and the bones of Jonathan his son, and the bones of those who were hanging in the country of Benjamin, in Zelah, beside the tomb of Kish his father. So they did everything the king commanded, and after that God heeded the prayer for the land. The death of the Philistine giants. Now the Philistines were still at war with Israel, and David and his servants with him went down and fought against the Philistines, and David grew faint. Then Ishbi thought he could kill David. This Ishbi was one of the descendants of the giants, and the weight of his spear was the weight of 300 bronze shields, and he was girded with a club. But Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, came to his aid and struck the Philistine and killed him. Then David's men swore to him, saying, you shall no longer go out with us to battle, that you do not quench the lamp of Israel. Now after this there was another battle with the Philistines at Gath. Then Sibbecai the Hushathite killed Saph, who was one of the descendants of the giants. And there was war at Gob with the Philistines, where Elhanan the son of Jaar-Origim the Bethlehemite killed Goliath the Gittite, whose spear had a shaft like a weaver's beam. Yet again there was a battle at Gath, where there was a man of strife who had 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot, 24 in number. He also was born to the giant, and he defied Israel, and Jonathan the son of Shimea, brother of David, killed him. These 4 were born at offspring of the giant in Gath, and they fell by the hand of David and by the hand of his servants. And we continue now with chapter 11 of 1 Corinthians. Imitate me, just as I also imitate Christ. The conduct of women. Now I praise you, brethren, that you remember me in all things and keep traditions just as I delivered them to you. But I want you to know that the head of every man is Christ, the head of every woman is man, and the head of Christ is God. Every man praying or prophesying, having his head covered, dishonors his head. But every woman who prays or prophesies with her head uncovered dishonors her head, for that is one and the same as if her head were shaved. For if a woman is not covered, let her also be shorn. But if it is shameful for a woman to be shorn or shaved, let her be covered. For a man indeed ought not to cover his head, since he is the image and glory of God, but woman is the glory of man. For man is not from woman, but woman from man. Nor was man created for the woman, but woman for the man. For this reason the woman ought to have a symbol of authority on her head because of the angels. Nevertheless, neither is man independent of woman, nor woman independent of man in the Lord. For as women came from man, even so man also comes through woman. But all things are from God. Judge among yourselves. Is it proper for a woman to pray to God with her head uncovered? Does not even nature itself teach you that if a man has long hair, it is a dishonor to him? But if a woman has long hair, it is glory to her, for her hair is given to her for a covering. But if anyone seems to be contentious, we have no such custom, nor do the churches of God. Unity at the Eucharist. Now in giving these instructions, I do not praise you, since you come together not for the better, but for the worse. For first of all, when you come together as a church, I hear that there are divisions among you, and in part I believe it. For there must also be factions among you, that those who are approved may be recognized among you. Therefore, when you come together in one place, it is not to eat the Lord's Supper. For in eating, each one takes his own supper ahead of others, and one is hungry and the other is drunk. What? Do you not have houses to eat and drink in there? Or do you despise the church of God and shame those who have nothing? What shall I say to you? Shall I praise you in this? I do not praise you. For I received from the Lord that which I also delivered to you, that the Lord Jesus, on the same night in which he was betrayed, took bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and said, Take, eat, this is my body which is broken for you. Do this in remembrance of me. In the same manner he also took the cup after supper, saying, This cup is the new covenant in my blood. This do as often as you drink it in remembrance of me. For as often as you eat this bread and drink this cup, you proclaim the Lord's death till he comes. Therefore, whoever eats this bread or drinks this cup of the Lord in an unworthy manner will be guilty of the body and blood of the Lord. But let a man examine himself, and so let him eat of the bread and drink of the cup. For he who eats and drinks in an unworthy manner eats and drinks judgment to himself, not discerning the Lord's body. For this reason many are weak and sick among you, and many sleep. For if we would judge ourselves, we would not be judged. But when we are judged, we are chastened by the Lord, that we may not be condemned with the world. Therefore, my brethren, when you come together to eat, wait for one another. But if anyone is hungry, let him eat at home, lest you come together for judgment. And the rest I will set in order when I come. Chapter 12, Spiritual Gifts. Now concerning spiritual gifts, brethren, I do not want you to be ignorant. You know that you were Gentiles carried away to these dumb idols, wherever you were led. Therefore I make known to you that no one, speaking by the Spirit of God, calls Jesus accursed, and no one can say that Jesus is Lord except by the Holy Spirit. There are diversities of gifts, but the same Spirit. There are differences of ministries, but the same Lord. And there are diversities of activities, but it is the same God who works all in all. But the manifestation of the Spirit is given to each one for the profit of all. For to one is given the word of wisdom through the Spirit, to another a word of knowledge through the same Spirit. To another faith by the same Spirit, to another gifts of healings by the same Spirit, to another the workings of miracles, to another prophecy, to another discerning of spirits, to another different kinds of tongues, to another the interpretation of tongues. But one and the same Spirit works all these things, distributing to each one individually as he wills. For as the body is one and has many members, but all the members of that one body being many are one body, so also is Christ. For by one Spirit we were all baptized into one body, whether Jews or Greeks, whether slaves or free, and have all been made to drink into one Spirit. For in fact the body is not one member but many. If the foot should say, because I am not a hand, I am not of the body, is it therefore not of the body? And if the ear should say, because I am not an eye, I am not of the body, is it therefore not of the body? If the whole body were an eye, where would be the hearing? If the whole were hearing, where would be the smelling? But now God has set the members, each one of them in the body just as he pleased, and if they were all one member, where would the body be? But now indeed there are many members, yet one body, and the eye cannot say to the hand, I have no need of you, nor again the head to the feet, I have no need of you. No, much rather those members of the body which seem to be weaker are necessary, and those members of the body which we think to be less honorable, on those we bestow greater honor. And our unpresentable parts have greater modesty, and our presentable parts have no need. But God composes the body, having given greater honor to that part which lacks it. And there should be no schism in the body, but that the members should have the same care for one another, and if one member suffers, all members suffer with it, or if one member is honored, all the members rejoice with it. Love superior to gifts. Now you are the body of Christ and members individually, and God has appointed these in the church: first apostles, second prophets, third teachers, after that miracles, then gifts of healing, helps, administrations, varieties of tongues. Are all apostles? Are all prophets? Are all teachers? Are all workers of miracles? Do all have gifts of healing? Do all speak with tongues? Do all interpret? But earnestly desire the best gifts, and yet I show you a more excellent way. And we'll continue tomorrow with chapter 13. God bless you, and thank you for your support. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.